Hello and welcome to the Godless Moms podcast. We almost didn't make it here today because we were talking. We were so chatty and we almost forgot to go live. But welcome everybody to our live stream today we're going to be discussing Astroworld and what happened there, which is not going to be the most fun conversation because pretty sad what happened over there in Houston. And we're also going to be talking about Aaron Rodgers, which might be a little bit more fun because I feel totally fine making fun of him. And this is my lovely co-host, Janice.
Hello.
And Janice is hosting a new divorcing religion workshop. So you should go check out her website, which is, I'll just pop it up right there. Go there, check it out. She does good stuff. How are you doing today, Janice?
Well, I think there's a delay between my voice and my lips moving. Just like an old Godzilla movie. Other than that, I'm doing fine. The workshop has started. It started on Sunday. And it's just a great group of people going through this cohort, this particular time. Lots of different backgrounds, from Mormon to Baptist to all sorts of different evangelical groups. And it's a place for them to support one another as they're making their journey from sacred to secular living. So, yeah, really happy about that.
Cool.
Hey, did you say that we have merch, you and me? Do we have Godless Moms merch?
We do. There's Godless Moms t-shirts over at godlessmom.com. I believe I put a link to them on the podcast page there. So
beauty.
I almost totally forgot about those.
Oh, yeah. And let's not forget that you and I are joining these fine folks from the unceded territory of the Seal people in the Okanagan Valley, British Columbia. And I've got my poppy on. For our American friends joining us in Canada, we wear poppies for a Remembrance Day, honoring our veterans. And that's
which
coming
is
up on the 11th.
Yeah, November 11th. And we get the day off to remember.
Well, some of us do. Some of us are still working a little bit, but
yeah, most of my clients are American, so I usually have to work on Canadian holidays.
Ditto.
Yeah. So, what do we want to talk about first? Aaron Rodgers or Astroworld?
Sure. Yeah, we can talk about the athlete first, because that seemed to really come as a big surprise to people that he's not a vaccinated person and does not support the COVID vaccine. And I think a lot of people were under the mistaken idea that since he identifies as an atheist, that of course he would be accepting of and endorsing science, and rather than woo. So
yeah, it was kind of shocking, especially given that in August in a press conference or an interview or whatever, he was asked directly, "Are you vaccinated?" And he replied, "Yes." And then he paused and then he said, "I'm immunized." And that, I mean, anybody would listen to that and think, okay, he's vaccinated, right? Why would we question that? Why would we question this man who's supposed to be like a role model for young people and stuff like that, and a leader on his team? And like, why would you question what he meant by "yes, I'm immunized"? Everybody thought he was saying that he was vaccinated, and turns out that what he actually meant, which came out last week or something like that, it turned out that what he actually meant is that he consulted his homeopathic doctor, or it might have been like a real doctor who gave him homeopathic advice or something like that, and they cooked up this regimen, as he called it, or protocols of like, vitamins and exercise and like, I don't know, steam baths, maybe burning sage, who knows. And apparently this is what immunized, very loosely using this term, immunized him against COVID, which of course didn't work because he ended up getting COVID.
So what has he said after he got COVID? Then he probably said he really felt that he was immunized against it, because there can be a certain degree of immunity after we've had something, but it's much less. It's a much lower degree than receiving the vaccine, let alone receiving the vaccine twice.
Yeah.
Plus a booster.
Yeah. And he essentially lied. He essentially lied to the NFL. He lied to his fans. He lied most importantly, he lied to his teammates who trusted him to be vaccinated because the rest of them are. And he basically lied, and he came out and he did an interview, I think it was last week, where he explained that he felt like to be put in the unvaccinated category, he would face like all this retribution from the quote unquote woke mob and all of this stuff. And so essentially he lied to his team who trusted him so that he wouldn't be criticized by people on Twitter, essentially. Yeah. And now he's being criticized by people on Twitter. So
it sure is.
Honestly, I don't even understand. And then when he said that when he came out and told everybody that he had COVID, he said in the same interview that he consulted not with a doctor and not with an immunologist or
not even a witch doctor.
No, guess who he consulted with?
A veterinarian?
No, Joe Rogan.
Oh my God. Really, people?
Joe Rogan, the self-admitted idiot.
Wasn't he the Fear Factor guy?
Yeah.
Or something?
He consulted with Joe Rogan, who told him throw the kitchen sink at it, because that's what Joe Rogan did when unvaccinated Joe Rogan also got COVID. He threw the kitchen sink at it, including ivermectin and all of these other treatments.
But under no circumstances does that kitchen sink include the vaccine.
No. Why would you take the vaccine? Why when you can take horse paste?
It's bad. I don't understand these like, honestly, these people are morons. They are just straight up morons. And he in the same interview, he's going on and on and on about how he's a free thinker and he marches to his own drum and all of this stuff. It's like, literally, you just finished saying you consulted with Joe Rogan on what to do in this situation. You're marching to Joe's drum. You're not marching to your own drum, dude. Yeah, there's I really hesitate to infer that they're stupid or whatever, but I do definitely think that they are indoctrinated, just the same as religious people are not less intelligent. They are just more indoctrinated.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, he's been indoctrinated with misinformation. And then, of course, if that becomes your echo chamber and all you're listening to are people like Joe Rogan or whatever his name is, and that's all the information you're getting, then it seems like the right thing. And of course, the more he invests in that, it's like the sunk cost fallacy. The more time and energy he invests in that, the less likely he is to walk away from it.
Yeah. And there was a few things that he brought up in the interview, which, like, honestly, at this point, if you haven't heard the rebuttal to these comments yet, you, like, your ears must be broken, because I don't know. But he said, one of the things he said is, like, I don't really understand why, if everybody else is vaccinated, why you need me to be vaccinated. And I mean, it's just, this is the same thing that so many anti-vaxxers say constantly. They keep saying this, and they will not listen to the answer. And the answer is very simple. It's that you vaccinate yourself to slow the spread. Every single vaccinated person helps to slow the spread, because vaccinated people don't spread it as easily. Yes, they still can. And yes, they still can get infected, because vaccines are meant to help your immune system fight it off once you do get infected. But they slow the spread down. That means that if we have every single eligible person vaccinated, that is the slowest possible spread that we can reach. Period. And that means that we save the most possible lives. Because, with each person slowing the spread down, that's fewer people who end up catching it. And that means fewer people in the hospital, fewer people who die. And like, it's just so simple. It's so simple. And this has been the same way that every vaccine has ever worked in the history of the world. And now all of a sudden we've just decided we don't know how vaccines work anymore, despite the fact they have literally doubled our life expectancy in the last 100 years.
And I have heard from people, they're suspicious because some people who are doubly vaxxed are actually dying. Some of them have died, and that is true. And people who are severely immune compromised, like my daughter, she's been doubly vaxxed, but the fact is her body might not mount a robust enough response if she's invaded by COVID. Even though she's been vaxxed twice, her immunity is so compromised already that she might not survive it. And then those are the people, it's likely, that are the ones who are dying. And so that's a big reason that I got vaccinated, was because I wanted to protect other people as best I can. So to me, that's a piece that really appears to be missing. Where's your concern for your fellow man? But if you have actually been misinformed to the degree that you think the vaccine is worse than the illness, that's misinformation. People aren't in the hospital in huge numbers dying of the vaccine. They are in the hospital in huge numbers dying of the virus.
Yeah. And if you're vaccinated and you catch COVID, like, just as an example, let's say an unvaccinated person catches COVID and continues to go to football practice and have huddles with his teammates, and he can easily spread it to 5, 6, 7 people. Let's say a vaccinated person catches COVID and does the same thing. They spread it to maybe 2 people or 3 people, and it's obviously, it's not a 100% solution, but we don't have anything on this planet that is a 100% solution all of the time. You have to weigh the risks of each scenario and figure out which one reduces the risk the most, and while still enabling us to live our lives, of course. And that's just simply getting the vaccine. It reduces the spread as much as we possibly can. It's never going to eliminate the spread. That's what a lot of immunologists are saying now. And a lot of the researchers and scientists and stuff like that are saying that this may be something like the flu, where we have to just deal with it seasonally and, get boosters maybe every year. And I'm totally fine with that. If it slows the spread down as much as we possibly can, that means we save lives. And those lives are lives like your daughter, who are immunocompromised and who have done their part by getting vaccinated, but we don't know how their body is going to react to that virus until they get it. And we don't want that to happen, because that could end up very poorly. And in order for us to prevent that from happening, we have to reduce the spread as much as possible. It's just as simple as that. Like, I don't know.
Another
Go
big
ahead.
issue is that people aren't. It's a matter of where are you getting your information from. So the people who are choosing not to vaccinate, they feel like they've done their research, but that's not the same as peer-reviewed sources and actual scientists who have studied immunology and whatever else. It's not the same as Joe Rogan or some YouTube Yahoo. And so that's where a big, it's the distrust people have, a lot of people of the government, and unfortunately now of science and medicine. It's very unfortunate.
We have a comment from Raymond who said, "You can't make my decisions for me. Nobody is trying to make your decisions for you. You are entitled to not get vaccinated, but what you are not entitled to do is endanger my health or the health of my children or the health of my family." And if what you are trying to say is that you should have the right to go out publicly and spread this virus as much as you want, then no, I'm sorry, that's just wrong. And you may not have had it yet, but you will have it eventually if you're not vaccinated. And the fact that you are not vaccinated shows that you do have a choice. What you don't have is the choice to take it into a restaurant with you. Just like you can't sit in a restaurant and light up a cigarette. It's the same thing. You don't have that freedom. You never have, well, I guess we did have that freedom to smoke in restaurants a while ago, but you haven't had that freedom for a long, long time. And you can't. You just can't. You are not, you're also not allowed to, like, you're fully free to drive a car, but you are not free to drive it drunk. There are consequences if you do that because you are endangering the lives of other people. And it's the same thing with the vaccine. You are free to not get vaccinated, but you are not free to then walk into public places where the owners have decided they don't want to be potentially exposed to COVID. You do not have that freedom, and you will never have that freedom. So nobody's making your choices for you. The fact that you are not vaccinated right now means you're making your own choices. Dumb ones, quite frankly.
Yeah, it's true. And it's a very disturbing and unsettling situation. My daughter actually said the other day, she said, who would have thought that a wave of stupid would wash over the entire world?
This is medical technology that has eradicated diseases that have killed so many people in the past and has literally doubled our life expectancy over the last 100+ years. And these people are literally afraid of a little needle. Like, literally afraid of a little needle. It is just insane.
Yeah,
it's
insane.
I
think Raymond is maybe a troll. So I don't mind if we want to invite him to depart. That would be just fine.
Invite him to depart. That's a very diplomatic way of saying block.
Yeah.
He's gone now.
I like Darren said, the freedom to swing your fists ends at another's nose. That is a great way to put it. Your personal freedom ends where the safety of another begins. Yeah, I certainly can't remember living through such a highly charged time as we're in right now. I've never seen our society so divided. Of course, back in the 50s and 60s when they were working to desegregate the schools and bring Black kids into the general school population. And that had people in an uproar as well. And fear definitely is behind these things. And so it's how can we approach people who are having these fears? But now it's also a whole lot of, well, my rights, I got my rights. And that's a harder one to deal with because you can't make someone care about other people. You can't force them to care.
Yeah, I'm a member of a few groups on Facebook just because, like, when you're on Facebook, your feed just is so toxic. a lot. And so I try to join groups where they post really positive stuff. And there's a few groups that are like super excited about the vaccines and pro, vaccine and everything like that. And they celebrate when they get their vaccines and stuff like that, which just makes me feel so much better to just see normal people. Um but a few times people have posted in there and they're being dead honest, and they say, I'm terrified of getting the vaccine. I'm not anti-vax. I'm trying to work my way up to it. I know I need to get it, et cetera, et cetera. Like, they're super pro-vax, but they're just scared of it. And that is a situation that I think needs to be approached entirely differently, with some understanding, and also like explaining facts to them, and explaining that, when you hand somebody a peer-reviewed source, it's not the same as handing somebody an opinion of some random doctor in Texas, right? It's just not the same thing, because it is the scientific method, the whole entire process itself, which strips the bias away from information, and that helps us to understand what is real, what is true, and what is not. And you can't just accept somebody's opinion as the same weight as something that's been through the peer review process. And so that's how you approach usually people who are afraid, offer to go with them, etc. And that's something that, some people have genuine like phobias of actual needles. So that also scares people too.
Being able to ask someone, what's your fear around it? What are your thoughts around it? Is there anything? What would it take to change your mind? And you're asking that kindly and curiously and warmly, rather than accusing people of being stupid or anything else. One way we can potentially keep a dialogue open, the other way immediately shuts people down.
Mm-hmm. Jeff Wilson just said, I'm not scared of it. I'm reluctant. All of the vaccines that are being discussed as the past 100 years of vaccines working are made completely different. These are the first ever RNA vaccines. I think that is accurate. No, that's not accurate. The mRNA vaccines have been made for rabies, for Zika, and even for some cancer prevention treatments as well. And they have been there is more data backing up the mRNA vaccines than any other vaccine in history. Given the massive rollout that we are having right now, more people have received it than any other vaccine in history, because we have the biggest population we've ever had in history, and everybody's going to get it. Most people are. There's so far, 3.6 billion people have been vaccinated, fully vaccinated.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and what we absolutely know is that there have been no deaths whatsoever associated with the mRNA vaccines. There were associated with the viral vector vaccines, which are AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson, I believe, but they are those were so few. Like, you could probably count them on one hand. I don't have the actual number in my head. But 5 million people have died of COVID. Like, 5 million people have died of COVID worldwide. That is a bigger number. And on top of that, 1 out of every 3 people who gets COVID suffers from long COVID, which is debilitating. Talk to anybody who's suffering from it, and it's absolutely debilitating. There have been NBA. Remember when the NBA was affected by COVID early in the pandemic? There have been so many NBA players. Well, not so many, but a couple at least, who have suffered so badly from long COVID that they have lost their careers. And I know that my husband was telling me last night there was a player in the NHL, an unvaccinated player in the NHL, who now has myocarditis from COVID and can't play. He's not playing. Like, people are giving up their careers for long COVID, and this is a massive, massive risk, as well as death. from COVID. So you're, I mean, if you're weighing the risks, the risks of COVID vastly outweigh the risks of anything you can get from the vaccines. And again, the vaccines have more data behind them than any other vaccine in history.
Jeff commented, okay, cool, thanks. I'll add that positive input to my pros and cons list. I think that's wonderful. Thanks, Jeff, for asking that question. Because since you asked it, we know that there are lots of other people who are also grappling with that question. So that's good. And to be able to ask something and have it be answered politely and calmly and with science to back it up, I think makes a big difference in whether people feel safe to ask such questions. So that's
and
good.
if you want to learn more about it, I'm popping my article about the vaccines in the chat, and I realize that I am not a doctor or a scientist. So the whole thing is sourced from people who have way more intelligent data than me. I've just compiled it all in one place for you. These are not my opinions. These are backed up facts with data and science. So
And
check it out and
Tyler,
follow the links.
thank you for the link. Tyler is also joining us today, and he mentioned that he is a long hauler with COVID. And he says, I believe tomorrow is 1 year since my positive result. I ended up in the ER in January with cardiac symptoms and have not been able to take a full breath since last November. Tyler, I'm really sorry to hear that. That sounds awful and very scary. And I think actually quite frustrating to feel like as time goes on and you're still not significantly healing from this illness.
Yeah, it's oh, here's another comment too. I'm sorry, Tyler, that you had to go through that. I've talked to so many people who are suffering the same thing, and I just like it makes me so just like I do not want to be around other people. I just don't want to catch this thing. But another comment. I unfortunately procrastinated in getting vaccine until I eventually unfortunately caught it, probably the Delta variant for various reasons, and ended up in the hospital for 33 days. Ugh, that must have been so scary. I remember I had a client who got COVID, and when I was on a meeting, like he was gone for like 3 weeks, and then we finally got to catch up and have a video call, and he was explaining to me what he had been going through. And it was like I had never seen him. He was one of those business bros, you know, who's like super confident all the time and just like, and then humbled, and he was so quiet. He was just trying to explain to me what he had been through, and he was on the verge of being emotional about it, saying that he was like every day it was getting worse, and he was in bed 18 hours a day, and every day it was getting worse, and all he could think about was that 5 million people didn't go back. Like they just kept getting worse.
Wow.
And that's all he could think about. He literally was like thinking about his own death for 3 weeks in bed. And I know he obviously survived, and he's doing okay now, but I mean just the emotional toll that must take on you.
Well, and this person that we just read their comment says, I lost 42 pounds, mostly muscle mass. Today was the first time walking. Hooray for you to be able to be walking again today. And that is horrifying to lose 42 pounds of mostly muscle mass. Yeah, it definitely changes you. Wow. Incredible.
Yeah, I had there was another person that I knew. She's the mother of my son's friends. They're twins, and she was vaccine hesitant. when the vaccines first rolled out, and she has 2 businesses in town. One was a hair salon and the other one is a zero waste store. So you go in there and you have your glass jar and you fill it with soap and stuff and you just go back to refill. It's awesome. And she got sick. She caught it and she spread it in both businesses. Both businesses had to be shut down by the interior health, and she then spread it to her parents, and her father ended up in the hospital for I think 3 or 4 weeks, and he's still recovering. And that was in I want to say April, I think, and he's still recovering from it. And her dad is in his 70s, and she, as soon as she realized that her dad had it and her mom had it, that's when she's like, okay, I have to go get this vaccine. And then she got her kids vaccinated and everything like that, and now she's super vocal for the vaccine. It makes me sad that people have to learn that way. It's just so upsetting.
Yeah, I have a dear friend with a pregnant daughter. It's the first child for that daughter, and daughter has not felt safe to get the vaccine while she's been pregnant, even though we know pregnant women are in even graver danger, like they're more likely. And anyway, yeah, now guess what? She has it. She's in the hospital. Lung has collapsed, and she's pregnant. Not around here. This is in a different province, but it's so heartbreaking, and I definitely feel for pregnant moms having to make this choice. It's one thing to decide something for yourself. It's very scary then when you're deciding for your unborn child. But it seems like the antibodies actually are being passed on to the newborns when they are born. So we really, the doctors, the scientists are encouraging pregnant women to get vaccinated.
Yeah.
And of course, neither you nor I are doctors or scientists. So I encourage you to talk to your own doctor about it.
Yeah, always. That was another thing too, is that Aaron Rodgers said that he was allergic to something in the vaccine, and I don't buy it, because the vaccines contain literally fats. Yeah, here I have the list. So it contains mRNA, which is basically a coded message that's sent to your body that then gets decoded and teaches your immune system how to create the COVID spike protein, which then triggers the immune response. So normal vaccines have like a dead or a weakened version of the virus, and when that hits your body, your immune system is triggered to fight it off. With this one, it's a message, and your body then creates the spike protein, which then triggers the immune response. And now your body knows how to look for that spike protein when the real thing comes.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, so then it also has lipids, which are like fats, and they're naturally occurring already in your body. It has polyethylene glycol, which is another fat and is in laxatives and Pepto-Bismol. It has cholesterol, we know what that is, and you get way more of it in your eggs. Potassium chloride, which is potassium salt, and I believe there's more potassium in a banana. And it's also, potassium chloride has been deemed one of the world's most essential medicines. Monobasic potassium phosphate, which is a salt that is in Gatorade. Way more of it, by the way. And sodium chloride, which is a salt. It is literally salt, and that's like the kind that you're going to put on your dinner tonight. And then it also has dibasic sodium phosphate dihydrate, which is another salt that is in Jell-O and chocolate. And then it has sugar. So I find it very difficult. If this man was allergic to any of these ingredients, how is he even surviving? Because all of these things like naturally occurring in our bodies already. So he's basically saying that he's allergic to himself. So I don't know. I don't believe it.
So, yeah, for some folks, it would appear as though there is a bit of a disconnect from reality. And that actually can lead us into our next topic, if you're ready to
Yes.
go there,
Yes, let's
um,
jump.
which was about the very sad event that took place in Texas, at the concert. And I think 8 people were crushed or died as a result of the massive surge of people to the front of the stage, and they were pretty much caught there. There was a crowd of like 50,000 people. I can't even imagine a concert being that big. That is crazy. And it sounds like there wasn't enough policing, and all the rest, and as a result, people died.
I think what happened was he's known for like um promoting the promoting people trying to sneak in and like charge the gates. And so because this is kind of like the culture around the Travis Scott concerts, people were kind of expecting that they would be able to charge the gates and get in, and he would let them stay because this is something that he promotes. He's actually been charged criminally twice with inciting a riot for this very reason.
Mm.
And there's video that came out from Astroworld of thousands, literally thousands of people storming the VIP ticket gate.
I
And
saw that.
yeah, so that's how it ended up being way over capacity. And they, it was just way too crowded in there. And then, of course, he from the stage promoted more stupid behavior in the crowd. And I think that there's every chance in the world that he honestly didn't believe or didn't know what was going on.
Hmm.
I find it very difficult to believe that if he knew there was dead people in the audience, that he wouldn't have stopped.
Right, right.
I think that he would have,
Mm.
but that it doesn't excuse what happened, and it doesn't remove the responsibility that he holds because of the culture that he promotes at these shows. He one time convinced a guy to jump from a balcony at one of his shows, and he ended up being
Oh,
paralyzed for life.
wow.
Yeah. So, and this is just the type of thing that he promotes. And he likes to be the bad guy. It's part of his image and stuff like that. But
Mm.
I grew up listening to like metal and alternative rock and all that stuff, and lots of those people had the quote unquote bad guy image, but Kurt Cobain
Well,
stopped
I
shows to
I
help
listened
people.
to Striper. They were the bad guys of the Christian rock. Anyway, sorry. Yellow and Black Pack. Yes, the bad boys. Hmm. Well, you know what
Yeah.
I find just even crazier? Like the whole thing isn't crazy enough and horrible enough. The QAnon folks have decided that the whole concert there with all the people dying was very satanic, and that the
Mm,
singer Travis, what was his name, Travis somebody, that
Travis Scott.
he was orchestrating a mass satanic ritual by killing all these people. And they're coming up with, oh, I read one thing that said this concert was exactly 666 days and 6 months after such and such happened. So they love to infuse numerology and secret codes and all that kind of stuff in there. Actually, I have a link to an article that we can just put in our chat here, which people might be interested in leaving. Oh, can I get in there to leave an article?
I'll pop it. It was that
Yeah,
Raw Story
yeah, it's
one.
the same one
Yeah.
that I sent you. Yeah, and so, and then also I heard from someone who was hanging out in the New Age kind of spiritual camps, and she said, no, that's not just QAnon saying those things. It's very much made its way into the Crunchy Mom granola kind of set as
Crunchy
well.
Mom.
Yeah, and
I'm
so the
so glad I'm
thing,
not a crunchy mom.
no, I'm very glad to. And the thing seems to be, if once you if you accept any sort of magical thinking, supernatural ideas, or woo, you are leaving yourself very vulnerable, incredibly vulnerable. Like we saw with the QAnon folks last week, where they were saying, oh, JFK Jr. is going to show up. It's not that much of a stretch. If you already
Mhm.
believe that Lazarus was resurrected from the dead, Jesus Christ was resurrected from the dead, so what? Why shouldn't JFK Jr. also resurrect from the dead if they believe he was dead in the first place? But so we, if we start accepting things without evidence, we become vulnerable to charlatans and nincompoopery on just a massive scale. So
Yeah.
something to think about.
Yeah, it was all over TikTok. These people with were pointing out that I think it was on the show poster or the festival poster, there was like Illuminati symbolism, and then it was just all of these different things. But you know what I find the funniest thing of all is that it's the same ridiculousness as the satanic panic from the 80s. It's
Yeah.
like, sit down and actually talk with a Satanist. Right? Like, just sit down. Find a Satanist on Twitter or Facebook or something like that. Have a video call with them. Just talk to them. Ask them what it is they believe, and you're going to be shocked because they don't believe in actual
Mm-hmm.
Satan. They do not believe in actual Satan. And if you guys haven't seen the meme that has gone viral like 80 times of me saying on Twitter, um Satanists don't believe in a literal Satan, and someone replies, "Well, who does then?" And the Church of Satan chimes in and says, "Christians." It is it is not Satanists don't sacrifice to Satan because they don't even believe in him. And it's so ridiculous. But when something like this happens, it's the same thing as the QAnon thing popping up during this pandemic. When something big and devastating like this happens, people will go to great lengths to try and make sense of it because it's so hard to wrap your mind around a bunch of kids going to a
Mm-hmm.
show to have fun and dying there. Like,
Yeah.
it's heartbreaking to think about that, and
Yes.
this is
Yeah. And fear is driving so much of this, and even as far as and the anti-vax movement, fear also is at play there. And the more unstable and insecure things feel to us, the more desperate we become for order. Like you're talking about, for humans crave certainty, security, and order. Those are what make us feel safe, and we will go to great lengths to make ourselves feel safe so that we can say, oh, that would never happen to me because I know the magic words, or whatever it is we think we're doing. Um, it's scary to think of the world being random. It's scary to think that a virus could wipe us all out. Um, but it's true.
yeah. Yeah, it's it's an interesting turn of events. Like, it was really weird. I was trying to catch up on what the story was about because we were out of town over the weekend, and I wasn't really looking at my phone a whole lot. And I came home and I saw a bunch of tweets about it and stuff like that. I was like, what's going on? And so I'm just like trying to catch up on what was going on, what the story was about, when, I started to see things about it being this satanic ritual. And I'm just like, honestly, the other thing though, like, despite the fact that I get that some people need to make these things up to kind of cope with the gravity of the situation, at the same time, it's so disrespectful to the people who died and their families and the people who are in the hospital and recovering and all of that stuff. And I listened to a podcast yesterday where they had several people call in who were actually at the show, and and they didn't none of them had any injuries, but they were emotionally like shaken up, and you could hear it. Like, they were getting super emotional on the phone. And like, this is something that's going to affect a lot of people for a long time, and to turn it into some kind of a conspiracy theory so that you as a spectator 2 countries away can cope with it is super disrespectful. It's just like sometimes bad things happen and it's time for us all to put on our big boy pants or big girl pants and cope with the fact that bad things happen. And this is not the way to react to it. The way to react to it is to be supportive and figure out how we can help and learn from this situation so that it
Yeah.
doesn't happen again.
Right. Yeah, definitely a crowd control issue first and foremost. Um, it makes me think also of, remember that horrible, awful Sandy Hook shooting at the school that took place many years ago, and so many children were killed by a mass shooter, and then people came along who denied that it even happened,
Yeah.
and still are saying, oh well, that's not a real thing. And I feel like, yeah, I'm sure at some point there'll be some ding dong that tries to say the same thing about this tragedy. Oh well, it didn't actually happen. So yeah,
Yeah, they call it
you can take conspiracy theories to the absolute most ridiculous level, and then if you have other people around you that are saying like, yeah, I think that's right, that sounds true, it makes it very hard to wake up, to come back to reality. It's that
yeah.
sunk cost fallacy again. The more time and energy we invest in a certain belief system, the harder it is to shake ourselves free.
Yeah. Yeah, Jeff Wilson said it was crowd control failure like some soccer games we've heard of in years past. Yes, and also some religious events as well. There have been, I believe, several different kinds of like pilgrimages that have ended in the trampling
Yeah,
of
at Mecca, I
human
think in
beings.
particular.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's just I don't know, I don't think you can even blame the crowd. They just someone a story came out and actually the police confirmed this story, um, that a security guard was heading out into, like, the area where people were falling down to try and help somebody or something like that, and he felt a prick in the back of his neck, and then he passed out. The paramedics got there, they gave him Narcan, and he actually revived, and they found the actual puncture wound on his neck. And so the theory or something, the police thought maybe somebody was going around stabbing people with drugs.
Oh,
It's
hypodermic.
so far-fetched because who gives away their expensive drugs like that? But it's you know it's I, they think that potentially that could have caused some kind of panic as well, making things worse.
Well, and
um
if someone was doing such a thing to security guards, then there wouldn't be the adequate crowd control. It is hard to say because there are some people who have done terrible, terrible things, and so we know that there is a segment of the population out there capable of doing terrible things.
yeah,
So while we feel safer saying that could never happen, um, you know what? There is a possibility sometimes that some of these terrible things could happen, and that makes it even harder for us to have discernment and wisdom and try and sort through things and figure them out.
yeah, it's just the whole thing is just so it's really sad, it's really scary, and I remember I don't know if you went to a lot of shows when you were younger, but I did, um, and I was into, like, the whole grunge scene, which was that meant that there was always a mosh pit, and I had that like the plague because I was always very short and very, very small, and when I was in a mosh pit, all I saw were elbows. Like, and I go to a show to see the band play. Like, I want to see the people that I came to see. I don't want to see elbows. So I usually like kind of hang back or off to the side or whatever. But if like it does get very scary in there. I
I went to Christian concerts, so moshing wasn't really much of a problem. Well, that's true.
So have you ever been to a show with a mosh pit?
Uh, no. I'm not
Wow.
even sure what it would look like. Is it an actual pit?
It's just the area in the front of the stage where the crowd kind of like seethes
Oh,
in unison, you know? It's like,
okay.
and they end up
Yes.
jumping and kind of slamming into each other and stuff like that. And like,
Right.
you know, when I was like 15, 16, 17, in a crowd like that, I would have died. I would have just died. Like I just would have been tossed around like a football.
Mhm.
It's just
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I did at some point in my late teens. I think I went to see Tom Cochrane and Red Rider in Kelowna. Here we had all our concerts used to be at the Memorial Theater, which could maybe have 2,000 people or whatever. Maybe April Wine or some Trooper, some kind of Canadian
yeah.
kind of groups like that, but nothing too scary. That
Well,
I
I'm
think
gonna
I
have
would
to
feel
take you
really
to one.
unnerved by that. Yes, yes, let's do it. Let's go to a real good one.
Yeah. We got to figure out who's coming. Um yeah, it's a sight to behold. It's funny to watch, and I always like it always I'm just such a stick in the mud at places like that. Like I sit off to the side and I'm always like, "Oh, that how do they keep their phones?" Like that guy just lost his shirt. You know?
Not being very, yeah, exactly, very practical.
I'm
I see Jeff says, what was that 90s Christian band, Sonic? I saw one of their concerts and there was a mosh pit. Yeah, I remember when Striper was such a big deal in the 80s, and I'd go to the Christian skate, the roller skating, and the bad boys at the Christian skate, they had ripped up yellow sheets and black sheets and tied them around their legs, and these bandanas were like, ooh, striper, striper. Fun times.
That's funny.
you know, I know. And actually, one reason that we had wanted to talk about these things today, even though we're a secular parenting program, um, is because this is about entertainment. And
Yeah.
and I was just thinking how different probably the environment I grew up in and raised my children in compared to the environment you grew up in and raised
Yeah.
your children as far as entertainment goes. I have a feeling yours was the much more fun household.
Yeah, well, I didn't go to my first show until I was in my teens. Um, my parents never went to shows or anything like that, but they were that's not to say they weren't fun. They were so fun. We did all kinds of other things. But um I was allowed as soon as I wanted to, I was allowed to go as long as I paid for it. Um and so I started going to shows, I don't know, 14, 15 years old, I think. And I just had to be smart. My parents always made me check in after the show, and that was pretty much it. I was allowed to go
There
and
probably weren't even cell phones then,
no,
were there?
there weren't. And I was allowed to go see even shows where the lyrics had cuss words in them. That's how badass I was.
Oh, yeah, you're pretty gnarly.
What about
No,
you?
there
What
was,
was it like?
well, we had lots of restrictions on even the TV shows that we could watch. Um, because certainly if it was anything about a witch or witchcraft, like Bewitched or I Dream of Jeannie, anything like that was definitely out. Scooby Doo was also suspect because there may be ghosts in there. Yeah, oh yeah, there were lots of things like that. Just rules, rules, rules. And then when I had kids, I took it even further because I'm like, TV, no, you'll get Veggie Tales. That's all my kids had was Veggie Tales for years and years. So really just and very fear based.
Yeah.
I was afraid that the devil was going to corrupt them by way of
Mhm.
the heathen programming or non-Christian books like Harry Potter. No way. I didn't even watch Harry Potter till a few years ago. I never even and I watched it with my kid who was like an adult by that time, and I thought it was pretty great. But
Yeah.
yeah, just the fear of my children being harmed kept me from giving them autonomy, really. And so
Mhm.
obviously I've had a major change since then, and I've discussed these things with them. My kids are grown now, But yeah, there were a lot of things I think that I denied them simply because of my own fear. And I think they're making up for it now, as I did.
That's awesome. I was allowed to watch pretty much anything, and I think that's what made me not really care about watching stuff that was above my years, you know what I mean? Like when I remember when I was 10 and Dirty Dancing came out, and remember everybody thought it was so risque. And my parents let me watch it, and I was 10, I think. And so my friends found out that my parents let me watch it, and so they all wanted to come to my house to watch it. My parents were like, "No, no, no. We let you watch it. We're not going to let other people's kids watch it." but but it was, I mean, it's just dancing. It wasn't that bad, and I wasn't, destroyed by it. And I don't know.
Speaking of wanting to protect our kids, or, your parents were trying to be mindful of other people's kids, not, they weren't wanting to introduce them to stuff that the parents were uncomfortable with. I saw the most incredible story on the news of a young lady who was being kidnapped the other day. And there's a signal. There's like a hand signal that you can use to let people know that you're in danger and you need help. Can you show them the signal? Do you know?
Yeah, you go like that.
Right. Yep. Do your thumb and then cover it up. And so the young lady was in this car being kidnapped by this guy, and she was managing to signal to the people in the car behind her. And she was doing it for quite a while before they clued in that she was trying to signal them. And they knew the signal because they had seen it on TikTok. It was a Canadian made signal, by the way. And they contacted the authorities, and she was rescued. And the man was, charged with kidnapping and whatever else. So I think that's the kind of thing. Don't just sit around being scared and not let your children enjoy life. Give them skills and things that they need to know to help keep them safe. That's a much better way to do it.
Also empower them, because empowered children feel okay asking for help. Empowered children feel okay using a hand signal with strangers. They're not, too shy and meek, and they don't like hang out in the corners or whatever. They will yell if somebody's trying to grab them. Like, empower your kids. That's so important, to empower your kids. And one of the ways you empower your kids is by allowing them to make decisions for themselves. And that's ultimately what I think my parents did with me with the whole television thing, like letting me choose what I wanted to watch. And I do the same thing with my son. Most of his friends are still not allowed to watch The Walking Dead. My son has watched the first season with me when he was, I don't know, 9 or something like that, and then he decided it wasn't for him, and he hasn't liked horror since. But he chose it, and he decided it wasn't for him, and now he has no interest in things like he loves cartoons. And I think that it's the choice. Given the choice, they choose the right thing.
You're exactly right as far as offering the choice and allowing kids to choose. That's how they learn to make responsible choices. And yet that is something so I grew up in a Christian home, and especially in fundamentalist religious homes, that is a huge no-no. Parents would not do that. You demand obedience the first time, every time. You don't get to make choices here. I tell you what to do. Very authoritarian. And so then you end up with adults who are maybe scared to make decisions because they haven't been allowed to make decisions, and they're terrified that the world is just an awful, scary, bad place to be because that's what they've been taught. So really, we want to do exactly the opposite of that. Start offering our children choices, even right from the time they're toddlers. Would you like to wear this, or would you like to wear this today? Would you like to have a snack before your bath or after your bath? So it's like not an option. You are going to have a bath, but you get to decide when you want to have that snack. So just starting with small choices and then allowing them more autonomy the older they get.
Yeah, someone just asked, is Squid Game a bit too much for preteens? Honestly, this is totally my perspective, and I'm probably going to get a lot of heat for saying this, but it's it's completely dependent on your kid. And if you know your kid, you know whether or not they're ready for something like that. My son has his whole entire life been so fearless. I don't know where he got this from. Okay, we had a roommate when we first lived in Mexico and I was pregnant. We had a roommate who was a base jumper. I swear, I think he just like got vibes from him or something like that. This guy was like an adrenaline junkie. But my son has no fear. He's had no fear his whole entire life. Like he's never come to us with nightmares. He's never been afraid to try anything, from food to jumping into a lake from a high spot. Like he has no fear. And so that's why when he said he wanted to watch The Walking Dead, I was like, I know my child and I know that this is not going to affect him in the way that it might affect other kids, because he literally has no fear. And he watched the first couple of episodes of Squid Game with us, didn't have nightmares, didn't phase him one bit. And we also talk to him about these things too. It's important when they see stuff that's disturbing that you have a conversation with them. You ensure that they know that this is not real. He's 13, so he obviously has a good grasp on what's real and what's not. But it's totally up to you and your family and what's right for your kid, because every kid is different. Some kids are afraid of everything.
My kids have told me I'm not allowed to watch Squid Games because it's too violent, and they think that would be too much for me to see, because I'm not a big fan of violent shows, which is really funny because I actually am a big fan of true crime shows. But they're like, Mom, Squid Game is violent.
It is very violent, but it is so good.
Interesting. Yeah,
it is very good. There's one episode, and everybody watching this who hears this knows which episode I'm talking about. There's one episode where you just end up bawling through the whole thing, and it's not for violent reasons. It's like, it's very thought-provoking and emotional and moving. It's really good. Very well done.
Wow, we have really covered, we've run the gamut here on this episode. We've covered a lot of topics. You definitely got your money's worth today, people.
Yeah. Yeah, this was a good one. Although it's sad that I think there was one comment I just wanted to dress up here. It said, this person on YouTube said, I think the attacks against Travis Scott are also unfair. It was such a huge venue with over 50K people, and yet somehow being painted that he was ignoring people dying and continue the show. I don't know. Like, I think he takes some of the responsibility because of the culture that he promotes at his shows. Eventually it was going to end up poorly, but I also think that there's no way he could have. I don't think that there's any way that any human being would hear that somebody is dead in the crowd and not stop the show. I don't think he knew. I think he's being truthful about that.
Yeah.
We don't know what he was experiencing at the time. We don't know what he could see and hear, despite the fact that from some of the pictures, it seems obvious that there was an ambulance there, but you can also see half the crowd ignoring it, right? So that means that they didn't know.
Yeah, a crowd that big, it would be extremely, extremely hard to keep an eye on everything and on what was going on. And so, the big takeaway is those size crowds, we definitely need to be having a lot more supervision going on. And I actually have to go.
Okay, I just heard your doorbell.
All right. Okay, take care, everyone.
See you next week, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.